On the distant planet of Luminaris, a world bathed in shimmering light and crystalline skies, lived Princess Velithra. She was unlike any other member of her race, the Zorathians, tall, elegant beings known for their physical perfection and sharp intellect. But Velithra carried something they did not, a rare genetic condition that left her unable to walk without assistance and caused faint bioluminescent flickers across her pale blue skin. To many Zorathians, these traits made her an anomaly, flaw so glaring it rendered her unworthy of attention or respect. The royal palace of Luminaris stood as a monument to power and beauty, its towering spires glowing softly under twin suns. Inside, life moved at a brisk pace with advisors, scholars, and nobles bustling about in pursuit of progress and prestige. Amid this grandeur, however, Velithra often found herself alone, tucked away in quiet corners of the library where she spent hours poring over ancient texts. While others dismissed her as weak or useless, she poured her energy into learning everything she could about history, philosophy, and art. Her mind was sharp, her curiosity insatiable, but none seemed to notice. Her older brother, Crown Prince, Kalion, was the golden child of the family. Tall, strong, and charismatic, he commanded admiration wherever he went. He excelled in combat training, diplomatic negotiations, and public appearances, embodying every quality expected of a future emperor. In contrast, Velithra's presence barely registered. At formal gatherings, she sat quietly at the edge of the room, ignored by guests who whispered behind their hands about her unfortunate condition. Even her parents, Emperor Thalric and Empress Nisara, rarely acknowledged her contributions, focusing instead on grooming Kalion for leadership. One day, a delegation from Earth arrived at the palace gates. Led by Captain Elias Drake, a seasoned human diplomat, the group had come to negotiate trade agreements between humanity and the Zorathians. Humans were still newcomers to interstellar politics, viewed by many advanced species, including the Zorathians, as primitive and unsophisticated. Yet Elias approached his mission with determination and humility, determined to prove Earth's worth. The banquet hall buzzed with anticipation as the Zorathian court prepared to welcome the humans. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across long tables laden with exotic delicacies, while musicians played intricate melodies on instruments crafted from resonant metals. As the delegation entered, all eyes turned toward them. Elias, dressed in simple yet dignified attire, scanned the crowd with polite interest. His gaze eventually landed on Velithra, seated apart from the main throng. Something about her caught his attention. Perhaps it was the way she observed the room with quiet intensity, or the subtle glow emanating from her skin, giving her an ethereal quality. Whatever it was, Elias felt drawn to her. Ignoring protocol, he excused himself from the welcoming line and approached her table. "Good evening," he said warmly, bowing slightly. "I'm Captain Elias Drake. May I join you?" Velithra looked up, startled. No one outside her caretakers had ever sought her company before. For a moment she hesitated, unsure whether to dismiss him or accept his offer. But there was sincerity in his voice, a kindness that disarmed her defenses. "Of course," she replied softly, gesturing to the empty seat beside her. As they talked, Elias discovered a depth to Velithra that few had taken the time to see. She spoke eloquently about the history of Luminaris, sharing insights into its culture and traditions with clarity and passion. When Elias asked questions, she answered thoughtfully, her words revealing a wisdom far beyond her years. In turn, Elias shared stories of Earth, its diverse landscapes, its struggles, and its resilience. Though vastly different from Luminaris, his descriptions painted a vivid picture of a world striving to grow and adapt. For the first time in what felt like forever, Velithra felt truly heard. Most Zorathians dismissed her opinions or interrupted her mid-sentence, assuming she had nothing meaningful to contribute. But Elias listened intently, his expression reflecting genuine interest. It was a small thing, yet it meant more to her than she could put into words. Their conversation drew curious glances from nearby nobles who exchanged disapproving looks. Some muttered under their breath, mocking Elias for wasting time with someone they considered insignificant. Others openly sneered, questioning why a human would bother speaking to a broken princess. Neither Velithra nor Elias paid them much heed, too engrossed in their exchange to care about the whispers around them. When the evening drew to a close, Elias rose to take his leave. Before departing, he turned to Velithra and smiled. "Thank you for your company tonight," he said sincerely. "I look forward to speaking with you again soon." Velithra nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Thank you for noticing me," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the hum of the banquet hall. As Elias walked away, Velithra watched him go, her heart stirring with emotions she hadn't felt in years. For so long, she had resigned herself to invisibility, believing no one would ever value her for who she truly was. But in that brief encounter, Elias had shown her otherwise. Perhaps, just perhaps, things were beginning to change. Little did she know, this chance meeting would set off a chain of events that would alter the course of her life and the fate of two worlds forever. The days following the banquet passed in a blur for Princess Velithra. She couldn't stop thinking about Captain Elias Drake, the human who had shown her kindness when no one else did. His words echoed in her mind, replaying like a melody she couldn't shake off. For years, she had grown accustomed to being overlooked, dismissed as irrelevant by those around her. Yet Elias's genuine interest made her feel seen, not as an object of pity or scorn, but as someone valuable. Elias, too, found himself reflecting on their conversation. There was something extraordinary about Velithra, something that transcended the physical limitations others seemed so fixated on. Her intelligence, her quiet strength, and the way she carried herself with grace despite the weight of societal rejection struck him deeply. He decided he wanted to know more about her, and perhaps in doing so help bridge the gap between humans and Zorathians. Under the pretense of learning about Zorathian culture, Elias began visiting the palace library regularly. It wasn't difficult to find Velithra there. She spent most of her time surrounded by towering shelves filled with ancient scrolls and holographic archives. Each visit started casually, with Elias asking questions about Zorathian history or customs. But over time their conversations deepened, branching into topics ranging from philosophy to art, science to ethics. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the library's translucent dome, casting soft golden hues across the room, Elias leaned back in his chair and sighed contentedly. "You know," he said, glancing at Velithra, "I've learned more about your people in these past few days than I have in months of formal meetings." Velithra smiled faintly, tracing the edge of a datapad with her fingers. "That's because you're asking the right questions," she replied. "Most diplomats only care about trade routes and political alliances. They don't bother understanding what makes us, well, us." Elias nodded thoughtfully. "It's easy to focus on the surface-level stuff, isn't it? The flashy technology, the impressive architecture, but the real heart of a civilization lies in its stories, its values, its people." He paused, then added gently, "And some of its most remarkable people are often overlooked." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Velithra lowered her gaze, her cheeks tinged with a faint blush. She had grown used to deflecting compliments, brushing them aside as if they didn't matter. But coming from Elias, they felt different, like tiny sparks igniting a flame within her chest. Their bond grew stronger with each meeting. Elias shared tales of Earth, describing its vast oceans, sprawling cities, and diverse cultures. He spoke of humanity's struggles, wars, poverty, environmental crises, but also of its resilience, creativity, and capacity for hope. Velithra listened intently, captivated by his passion and optimism. In turn, she introduced him to Zorathian poetry, music, and art, revealing layers of her world that outsiders rarely glimpsed. Despite their growing connection, not everyone approved of their friendship. Rumors began circulating among the court, fueled by jealous whispers and xenophobic sentiments. Crown Prince Kalian, in particular, took offense at Elias's frequent visits to the library. One evening, as the two were engrossed in a discussion about interstellar diplomacy, Kalian stormed into the room, his expression stormy. "What is this?" he demanded, gesturing sharply at Elias. "A human wasting time with my sister? Do you think we invited you here to fraternize with cast-offs?" Velithra stiffened, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "Kalian, that's enough," she said firmly, though her voice trembled slightly. "Captain Drake is here as a guest of the Empire. Show some respect." Kalian sneered, ignoring her protest. "Respect? For a primitive creature who doesn't even belong in our court? And for you?" He turned his glare on Velithra, his tone dripping with disdain. "You should be grateful anyone notices you at all, let alone this outsider." Elias stood up slowly, his posture calm but resolute. "Your Highness," he said evenly, meeting Kalian's gaze without flinching. "I assure you my intentions are honorable. I'm here to learn about your culture and build bridges between our peoples. If spending time with your sister helps achieve that goal, then I see no harm in it." Kalian scoffed, clearly unimpressed. "Honor has nothing to do with it. This is a disgrace, a human consorting with someone like her." With that, he spun on his heel and strode out of the library, leaving behind a tense silence. For a moment, neither Velithra nor Elias spoke. Finally, Elias broke the quiet. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "It's not your fault," Velithra replied, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "People like Kalian will always find reasons to judge. Don't let him get to you." But Elias could see the hurt lingering in her expression, the way her shoulders sagged ever so slightly under the weight of her brother's words. He reached out, placing a gentle hand on hers. "Listen to me," he said earnestly. "You deserve better than this, better than their cruelty, their ignorance. You're brilliant, kind, and strong, and anyone who can't see that is blind." Tears welled up in Velithra's eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, with such conviction, such belief in her worth. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a life where she wasn't defined by others' expectations or limitations, where she could simply be herself and be cherished for it. As the weeks went on, their friendship continued to blossom, defying the disapproval of those around them. Together, they explored hidden corners of the palace, discovered forgotten artifacts in the archives, and dreamed of futures neither had dared to envision before. Through Elias, Velithra began to see herself through new eyes, as someone capable of greatness, deserving of love and acceptance. And through Velithra, Elias found inspiration. Her courage in the face of adversity reminded him of humanity's own journey. A species once dismissed as insignificant, now striving to prove its place among the stars. Their connection became a beacon of possibility, a testament to the power of empathy and understanding in a universe often divided by fear and prejudice. Little did they know, their bond would soon be tested in ways neither could anticipate. But, for now, in the quiet sanctuary of the library, surrounded by books and ideas, they found solace and the beginnings of something extraordinary. As the days turned into weeks, Velithra and Elias grew closer than ever. Their conversations in the library became a sanctuary, a place where they could escape the judgmental eyes of the court and simply be themselves. For Velithra, these moments were a lifeline, offering her a glimpse of what life could feel like without fear or rejection. For Elias, they were a reminder of why he had chosen diplomacy, not just to forge alliances but to connect with others on a deeper level. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet, Elias arrived at the library with an unusual request. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his tone light yet tinged with anticipation. Velithra raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Trust you? Why?" Instead of answering, Elias extended his hand. "Come with me. I want to show you something." Hesitant but curious, Velithra accepted his help and followed him out of the library. They made their way through the palace, corridors, avoiding the main halls where nobles lingered until they reached a secluded balcony overlooking the city. From this vantage point, Luminaria stretched out before them in all its glory, glittering spires, flowing rivers of liquid light, and streets bustling with activity even as night fell. "It's beautiful," Vailithra whispered, leaning against the railing. The cool breeze played with strands of her silvery hair, and the faint glow of her skin seemed to blend with the stars above. Elias stood beside her, gazing out at the view. "Not as beautiful as you," he murmured almost to himself. Vailithra froze, unsure if she had heard him correctly. She glanced at him, her heart pounding. "What did you say?" Elias turned to face her, his expression earnest. "I said, not as beautiful as you." He took a deep breath as though steeling himself for what came next. "Vailithra, I know we come from different worlds. I know there are rules and expectations that say we shouldn't even be friends, let alone anything more, but none of that matters to me. What matters is how I feel about you." Her eyes widened, shock rippling through her. Before she could respond, Elias continued, his voice steady despite the nerves evident in his posture. "You're smart, compassionate, and brave in ways most people will never understand. You've shown me parts of your world, and yourself that no one else has. And I can't imagine leaving here without knowing if there's a chance for us." He paused, searching her face for any sign of encouragement. When he found none, he pressed on, his words coming faster now. "I know it's sudden and maybe it's crazy, but..." He swallowed hard, then blurted out, "Will you be my mate?" The question hung in the air, heavy and electric. Vailithra stared at him, her mind racing. Mate? The word felt foreign, impossibly distant from the reality she had always known. No one had ever considered her desirable, let alone proposed such a bond. Her chest tightened as conflicting emotions swirled within her. Hope, fear, disbelief, all battling for dominance. Elias watched her anxiously, misinterpreting her silence as rejection. "I'm sorry," he stammered, taking a step back. "I didn't mean to pressure you. If this is too much..." "No," Vailithra interrupted, her voice soft but firm. "Don't apologize, it's just, I never thought anyone would ask me something like that." Her words tumbled out haltingly as she tried to make sense of her feelings. "For so long I've been told I'm not good enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough. And now you're standing here saying you see something in me that no one else does. It's overwhelming." Elias stepped closer, his expression filled with compassion. "You don't have to decide right now," he said gently. "But I meant every word I said. You deserve happiness, Vailithra, whatever form that takes." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. She wanted to believe him, to let herself dream of a future where she wasn't defined by her flaws. But the weight of reality loomed large. Accepting Elias's proposal would mean defying centuries of Zorathian tradition. It would mean risking exile or worse from her own people. Could she truly leave everything behind? "I need time," she admitted finally, her voice barely audible. "To think, to figure out what I want." Elias nodded, understanding. "Take all the time you need," he said. "Just know that whatever you decide, I'll respect it." They stood there together in silence, the city lights twinkling below them like scattered stars. Though the moment was bittersweet, it marked a turning point for both of them. For the first time, Vailithra allowed herself to entertain the possibility of love, of belonging somewhere beyond the confines of her current life. The next morning, news of Elias's proposal spread like wildfire through the palace. Servants whispered behind closed doors while nobles exchanged shocked glances during breakfast. By midday, the entire court knew, and reactions ranged from disdain to outright hostility. Crown Prince Kalian wasted no time confronting his sister. "Is it true?" he demanded, storming into her chambers. "That human actually asked you to become his mate?" Vailithra straightened, meeting his gaze with quiet defiance. "Yes," she replied evenly. "He did." Kalian sneered, disgust etched across his features. Unbelievable. First he humiliates our family by consorting with you, and now this? What kind of idiot throws away their dignity for someone like you? Enough, Vailithra snapped, surprising even herself with the sharpness in her tone. If you have nothing constructive to say, leave. Kalian hesitated, taken aback by her boldness. Then, with a derisive snort, he turned and stormed out, muttering under his breath about humans and their primitive ways. Despite Kalian's venom, other voices began to surface, some supportive, others skeptical. Lysara, Vailithra's younger sister, visited her later that day, bringing tea and a sympathetic ear. I think it's wonderful, Lysara said, sitting beside her on the couch. Elias sees you for who you really are, that's rare. Vailithra sighed, stirring her tea absently. It doesn't matter what he sees. If I accept, I'll lose everything, the court, my title, maybe even my family. Lysara placed a comforting hand on hers. Or you could gain something far greater, a life where you're truly happy. The idea lingered in Vailithra's mind long after Lysara left. Happiness. It was a concept she had almost forgotten existed, buried beneath years of rejection and self-doubt. Yet Elias's proposal had planted a seed, one that refused to be ignored. Over the next few days, Vailithra wrestled with her decision. She imagined staying on Luminaris, continuing her quiet existence in the shadows. But she also pictured a life with Elias, exploring new worlds and forging a path free from judgment. Each scenario pulled at her heart in different ways, making it impossible to choose. Finally, after countless sleepless nights, she came to a realization. Staying would mean remaining trapped in a role she had outgrown. Leaving, however difficult, offered the chance to redefine herself, to embrace a future filled with possibilities. When she met Elias again, she looked him squarely in the eye. I accept, she said, her voice steady, but on one condition. Elias blinked, startled. Anything. I'll stay here until my coronation ceremony, she explained. I won't run away or abandon my responsibilities. If I'm going to leave, I'll do it as someone who proved she belongs, not as someone trying to escape. Elias smiled, relief flooding his features. I wouldn't expect anything less. With that, their fates were sealed. Together, they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united by a bond stronger than tradition or prejudice. Little did they know, their journey was only beginning. Word of Vailithra's acceptance of Elias's proposal spread like wildfire throughout the palace. Servants whispered behind their hands, nobles exchanged scandalized glances, and advisors scrambled to contain the fallout. To the Zorathian court, the idea of a human bonding with one of their own, let alone a princess, was unthinkable. It wasn't just about interspecies differences. It was about tradition, pride, and the rigid hierarchy that governed every aspect of their society. And in this case, it involved someone they had long dismissed as unworthy. The backlash came swiftly and harshly. Crown Prince Kalian led the charge, his disdain for Elias reaching new heights. During a formal council meeting, he stood before Emperor Thalric and Empress Nisara, his voice dripping with contempt. This union is an insult to our people, he declared, slamming his fist on the table for emphasis. A human, a primitive outsider, sullies our bloodline by even considering such a bond. What message does it send to the galaxy if we allow this? His words resonated with many in the room. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly, while others nodded solemnly. Even those who had once pitied Vailithra now viewed her decision as reckless and selfish. They argued that accepting Elias's proposal would weaken the Empire's standing among other advanced civilizations, making them appear desperate or unstable. Emperor Thalric, usually calm and composed, struggled to maintain his composure. He turned to Vailithra, seated quietly at the edge of the chamber. Is this true? He asked, his tone heavy with disappointment. Have you agreed to become the mate of this human? Vailithra rose from her seat, her posture straight and dignified despite the weight of their judgment. Yes, father, she replied firmly. I have. Her response ignited a storm of protests. Advisors shouted over one another, accusing her of betrayal and foolishness. One elderly noblewoman even rose to her feet, pointing a trembling finger at Velithra. "You shame us all," she cried. "How dare you drag the royal family into this disgrace?" Velithra flinched, but refused to back down. She scanned the room, meeting the eyes of those who had ignored or ridiculed her for years. Now, suddenly, they cared enough to condemn her. "I am not doing this to shame anyone," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "I am doing this because I deserve happiness, just like anyone else. If you cannot see that, then perhaps the problem lies with you, not me." Her boldness stunned the room into silence. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, Kalian stepped forward, his expression cold and calculating. "Very well," he said smoothly. "If you insist on pursuing this path, then do so publicly. Announce your intentions to the entire court and to the galaxy. Let everyone know that the heir to Luminaris has chosen exile over duty." It was a challenge designed to humiliate her further, but Velithra saw it for what it truly was, an opportunity. She lifted her chin, meeting her brother's gaze without flinching. "Fine," she said. "I will announce my decision. But not as a failure or a disgrace. I will prove to everyone that I am more than the sum of their insults. Until my coronation ceremony, I will remain here and fulfill my responsibilities. Only then will I leave, with my head held high." Later, that evening, Velithra found herself pacing nervously in her chambers. The weight of her decision pressed down on her, heavier than ever before. She knew announcing her plans would spark outrage, possibly even violence. Anti-human sentiment was already simmering beneath the surface, fueled by xenophobic propaganda and fear of change. Accepting Elias meant risking everything, not just for herself but for him as well. Elias arrived shortly after, his concern evident in the way he hovered near the door, hesitant to intrude. When Velithra noticed him, she forced a smile. "You heard about the council meeting, didn't you?" He nodded, stepping closer. "I did. Are you okay?" She sighed, sinking onto the edge of her bed. "I don't know. Part of me feels relieved. I've never been one to shy away from challenges, but another part..." Her voice trailed off and she looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. What if I'm wrong? What if this tears the Empire apart? Elias knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "Listen to me," he said gently. "You're not responsible for how others react. All you can do is stay true to yourself. And if staying true means choosing love and happiness, then no amount of anger or hatred from them can take that away." His words brought tears to her eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. "Thank you," she murmured, "for believing in me when no one else does." Together they began preparing for the announcement. Velithra worked tirelessly, drafting speeches and consulting with Lysara, who remained her sole ally within the palace. Meanwhile, Elias faced hostility from nearly everyone he encountered, from snide remarks in the halls to outright threats during diplomatic negotiations. Yet he endured it all with quiet resilience, determined to stand by Velithra's side no matter the cost. When the day of the announcement finally arrived, the grand hall buzzed with tension. Nobles packed the space, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright fury. Reporters from across the galaxy lined the walls, eager to capture the unfolding drama. At the center of it all stood Velithra, clad in a shimmering gown that seemed to mirror the glow of her skin. Beside her, Elias stood tall, his presence a silent testament to his unwavering support. As the crowd quieted, Velithra took a deep breath and began to speak. "My fellow Zorathians," she said, her voice ringing clear and strong. "Today I come before you not as a princess defined by weakness or rejection, but as a woman determined to live authentically. Captain Elias Drake has offered me a partnership, built on mutual respect and understanding, a bond I choose to accept." Gasps rippled through the audience, followed by murmurs of disbelief. Ignoring them, Vaelithra continued. Some may see this decision as a betrayal of our values, but I see it as an affirmation of something greater. The belief that love transcends boundaries, that connection matters more than conformity. Until my coronation ceremony, I will remain here, fulfilling my duties as your future empress. Afterward, I will embark on a new journey, one that honors both my heritage and my heart. Her words hung in the air, electric and defiant. For a moment, the room fell silent. Then, slowly, applause broke out. Not from the nobles, but from the servants and lower-ranking officials gathered near the back. Their cheers grew louder, echoing through the hall like a tidal wave of support. Kalian scowled, clearly displeased, but there was nothing he could do to stop the momentum. Vaelithra had struck a chord, reminding those who had long been overlooked that they too deserved a voice. As the ceremony ended, she turned to Elias, her expression one of quiet triumph. "We've only just begun," she said softly. And indeed, they had. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but together, they were ready to face whatever came next. In the weeks following Vaelithra's announcement, the atmosphere on Luminaris grew increasingly volatile. The princess's decision to accept Elias's proposal had ignited a firestorm of emotions across the empire. While some celebrated her courage and defiance of outdated norms, others viewed her actions as a betrayal of everything Zorathian society stood for. Anti-human sentiment surged, fueled by propaganda and fear-mongering from those who saw the Union as a threat to their way of life. The capital city reflected this division. Protesters gathered outside the palace gates holding signs emblazoned with slogans like, "Protect our bloodline and no outsiders." Their chants echoed through the streets, growing louder each day. Inside the palace, tension simmered, just as fiercely. Crown Prince Kalian worked tirelessly to rally opposition against Vaelithra, accusing her of prioritizing personal desires over the empire's well-being. His rhetoric struck a chord with many nobles, who began openly questioning her fitness to rule. Despite the mounting pressure, Vaelithra refused to back down. With Elias by her side, she threw herself into addressing the needs of her people, especially those who had long been marginalized. Together, they introduced reforms aimed at improving accessibility and inclusion within Zorathian society. Public transportation systems were retrofitted to accommodate individuals with mobility challenges, while educational programs were expanded to include diverse perspectives. These changes earned praise from certain factions, particularly among the lower classes, but only deepened the animosity of the elite. Elias bore the brunt of much of the hostility. Whispers followed him wherever he went, labeling him an opportunist or worse. Some accused him of manipulating Vaelithra for political gain, while others spread baseless rumors about his intentions. During diplomatic meetings, advisors dismissed his input outright, refusing to acknowledge Earth's contributions to interstellar progress. Yet Elias remained steadfast, channeling his frustration into productive action. He collaborated with sympathetic Zorathian scientists to develop sustainable technologies that could benefit both planets, earning grudging respect from a few key figures. One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon, casting luminaries in hues of gold and crimson, Vaelithra and Elias found themselves alone on the same balcony where their journey had begun. Exhausted but resolute, they leaned against the railing watching the city lights flicker below. "Do you ever wonder if we're fighting a losing battle?" Vaelithra asked softly, breaking the silence. Her voice carried a note of weariness she rarely showed in public. Elias turned to look at her, his expression thoughtful. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I remember why we started this, to prove that love and understanding can overcome even the deepest divides. And when I see how far we've come," he gestured toward the distant protests, their shouts faint but persistent. "Even that chaos feels like part of the process." Vaelithra smiled faintly, though her eyes remained troubled. "I just wish it didn't have to hurt so much." "It will get better," Elias assured her, placing a comforting hand on hers. Change always comes with resistance, but once people see the benefits of what we're doing, they'll come around. Before Vailithra could respond, a servant approached, interrupting their moment. Your Highness, he said breathlessly, bowing low. There's been an incident, a fire in the Eastern District. Many are injured and shelters are overwhelmed. Without hesitation, Vailithra straightened, her fatigue replaced by determination. Gather medical teams and supplies immediately, she instructed. Turning to Elias, she added, We need to go there. Now. The scene in the Eastern District was chaotic. Flames licked at crumbling buildings, sending plumes of smoke spiraling into the night sky. Emergency responders struggled to contain the blaze while tending to panicked citizens. Amid the devastation, Vailithra and Elias moved quickly, coordinating relief efforts and offering aid wherever needed. They worked tirelessly, side by side, their shared resolve inspiring others to join the cause. As dawn broke, the worst of the fire was finally under control. Exhausted but relieved, Vailithra surveyed the damage, her heart heavy with sorrow. Then something caught her eye, a group of protesters standing nearby, their faces twisted with anger. One stepped forward, pointing directly at Elias. This is your fault, he shouted, his voice raw with accusation. You brought this curse upon us. The crowd murmured in agreement, some nodding fervently. Elias stiffened, instinctively stepping closer to Vailithra. But before either could respond, another voice rang out, calm, yet commanding. That's enough. All eyes turned to Lysara, Vailithra's younger sister, who had arrived with reinforcements. Clad in simple attire, her presence commanded attention nonetheless. She stepped between the protesters and the couple, her gaze unwavering. Blaming others won't help anyone here, she said firmly. What matters now is rebuilding and healing, not spreading hatred. Her words silenced the crowd, though the tension lingered. As the protesters dispersed, Vailithra pulled Lysara aside, gratitude shining in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, for standing up for us. Lysara shrugged, though her smile was warm. Someone has to. Besides, I believe in what you're doing. Back at the palace, investigators began piecing together the events leading up to the fire. Initial reports suggested it had been accidental, a faulty power conduit overloaded during maintenance. But as evidence mounted, suspicions arose. Certain details didn't add up, hinting at deliberate sabotage. Determined to uncover the truth, Vailithra enlisted the help of trusted allies, including Lysara and a group of Zorathian engineers sympathetic to her cause. Late into the night, they pored over data logs and security footage, searching for clues. Their efforts paid off when they discovered traces of explosive residue near the origin point of the fire, a substance not commonly used in Zorathian technology. This wasn't an accident, Vailithra concluded grimly, showing the findings to Elias. Someone wanted this to happen, and they wanted it to look like an attack from humans. Elias frowned, his jaw tightening. Who would go this far? The answer came days later, buried in encrypted communications intercepted by palace intelligence. Kalian had orchestrated the entire scheme, framing Elias and anti-human factions to discredit Vailithra and solidify his claim to the throne. Armed with irrefutable proof, Vailithra confronted her brother during a formal assembly, exposing his treachery in front of the entire court. You betrayed us all, she declared, her voice ringing with authority. For power, you risked countless lives and nearly destroyed our city. How dare you call yourself a leader? Kalian sputtered, attempting to deny the accusations, but the evidence was undeniable. The court erupted in outrage, demanding justice. Stripped of his title and privileges, Kalian was exiled, leaving Vailithra as the undisputed heir to the empire. Though victorious, Vailithra knew the fight wasn't over. Anti-human sentiment still lingered, and rebuilding trust would take time. But with Elias by her side and newfound allies supporting her vision, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they stood on the precipice of change, determined to forge a brighter future, not just for themselves, but for all of Luminaris. The aftermath of Kalian's exile sent shockwaves through the Zorathian Empire. For years he had been the Golden Child, a symbol of perfection and strength. His fall from grace was a public spectacle, one that left many questioning their loyalty to rigid traditions and hierarchies. Yet, while his betrayal had been exposed and punished, the scars it left on Luminaris ran deep. Anti-human sentiment still simmered beneath the surface, and whispers of conspiracy continued to spread like wildfire. Vaelithra stood at the center of it all, her resolve tested more than ever before. Though she had emerged victorious in unmasking her brother's treachery, the weight of leadership now rested squarely on her shoulders. With Kalian gone, there was no one else to shoulder the burden of guiding the Empire through its darkest hour. Every decision she made, from rebuilding the Eastern District to addressing xenophobic protests, was scrutinized under a microscope. The pressure threatened to crush her, but Elias remained a constant source of support, reminding her why they had chosen this path together. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Vaelithra found herself pacing nervously in her chambers. Tomorrow would mark the coronation ceremony, the culmination of months of turmoil and triumph. It was a day meant to celebrate her ascension to the throne, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The air around her seemed charged with unease, as though the calm before a storm. "You're thinking too much," Elias said gently, leaning against the doorway. "Come sit for a moment." She hesitated, but eventually joined him on the couch, sinking into the cushions with a sigh. "I just can't stop wondering if we've done enough," she admitted. "So many people are still angry, still afraid. What if tomorrow doesn't change anything?" Elias placed a reassuring hand on hers. "Tomorrow won't solve everything overnight," he acknowledged, "but it's a start. You've already proven that you're willing to fight for what's right, for your people, for our future. That matters more than any single event." His words brought a small measure of comfort, though the knot in her stomach refused to loosen. As they sat in silence, a knock echoed through the room. Lysara entered, her expression grim. "We have a problem," she announced without preamble. Vaelithra straightened immediately. "What is it?" Lysara handed her a datapad, her hands trembling slightly. On the screen was a message intercepted by palace security, a threat directed not only at Vaelithra but also at Elias. The sender claimed responsibility for the fire in the Eastern District and promised further attacks unless the human delegation left Luminaris permanently. "They're escalating," Lysara explained. "This isn't just about stopping the coronation anymore. They want war." Fear gripped Vaelithra's heart, but she forced herself to remain composed. "Who sent this?" she asked sharply. "We don't know yet," Lysara replied. "It's encrypted, and whoever wrote it covered their tracks well. But based on the language and tone, it's likely tied to the same faction that supported Kalian." Elias frowned, his protective instincts kicking in. "Then I should leave," he said firmly. "If my presence is putting you, and everyone else, in danger, I can't stay." "No!" Vaelithra exclaimed, gripping his arm tightly. "You leaving won't solve anything. If you go now, it'll look like we're giving in to fear. Besides," her voice softened, "I need you here. More than ever." Elias opened his mouth to argue, but Lysara cut him off. "She's right," she said. "Running won't fix this. We need to face them head on." Together, the three devised a plan. Security measures were tightened across the palace, with guards stationed at every entrance and surveillance drones patrolling the skies. Diplomatic envoys from Earth arrived secretly to bolster the human delegation's numbers, ensuring they could respond swiftly if violence erupted. Meanwhile, Vaelithra worked tirelessly behind the scenes, rallying allies and preparing speeches designed to unite rather than divide. The morning of the coronation dawned bright and clear, the city bathed in golden light. Thousands gathered outside the grand hall, eager to witness history unfold. Protesters lined the streets, holding banners and chanting slogans, but their voices were drowned out by the cheers of those who supported Vailithra's vision of inclusivity and progress. Inside the hall, the atmosphere was electric. Nobles, dignitaries, and citizens filled the space, their eyes fixed on the dais where Vailithra would soon take her place as empress. Beside her stood Elias, his presence a silent testament to the bond they shared. As the ceremony began, the crowd fell silent, anticipation hanging thick in the air. When it was time for Vailithra to speak, she stepped forward, her voice ringing clear and strong. "Today marks a new chapter, not just for me, but for all of us," she declared. "For too long, we have allowed fear and division to dictate our choices. We have turned away those who are different, dismissing them as unworthy or dangerous. But I stand here today to tell you that unity is not weakness, it is strength." Her words resonated deeply, earning applause from many in attendance. Yet even as she spoke, tension lingered. Outside, protesters grew restless, their chants growing louder. Inside, a handful of nobles exchanged uneasy glances, clearly uncomfortable with her message. As the ceremony neared its conclusion, chaos erupted. A deafening explosion rocked the building, sending shards of glass raining down on the crowd. Panic spread instantly, screams echoing through the hall as people scrambled for safety. Amid the confusion, armed assailants stormed the room, their weapons trained on Vailithra and Elias. "Stay back," one shouted, his voice distorted by a mask. "Your reign ends here." Before anyone could react, palace guards surged forward, engaging the attackers in a fierce battle. Elias pulled Vailithra behind him, shielding her with his body as they retreated toward a hidden passageway. Lysara followed close behind, shouting orders to nearby soldiers. In the chaos, Vailithra spotted something that chilled her to the bone. One of the attackers bore the insignia of a high-ranking noble family. Betrayal within the court extended far beyond Kalian. It was rooted in the very foundations of Zorathian society. Once safely concealed in the passageway, Vailithra turned to Elias, her expression steely despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "This isn't over," she said firmly. "Not until we root out the rot poisoning our empire." Elias nodded, his determination matching hers. Together they vowed to confront the forces threatening to tear their world apart, not just for themselves, but for the future they believed in. The aftermath of the attack left Luminaris reeling. The Grand Hall, once a symbol of elegance and unity, now bore the scars of violence, shattered glass, scorched walls, and bloodstains that refused to wash away easily. Dozens had been injured and several lives were lost in the chaos. Yet amidst the destruction, there was an undeniable sense of resolve. Vailithra's courage during the assault had inspired many, solidifying her image as not just a leader, but a fighter, a beacon of hope for those who believed in change. In the days following the coronation attempt, investigations revealed shocking truths about the conspiracy. The attackers belonged to a secretive faction within the Zorathian nobility known as the Veil of Purity, a group dedicated to preserving what they deemed the true essence of their species. Their hatred of humans stemmed from fear of losing control, fear of diluting their culture, and fear of being surpassed by younger civilizations like Earth. What made matters worse was the realization that this faction had infiltrated nearly every level of the empire, from military ranks to diplomatic circles. With Kalian's exile still fresh in everyone's minds, it became clear that his treachery had only scratched the surface of a much larger problem. Vailithra knew she couldn't let such corruption fester any longer. Under her leadership sweeping, reforms were implemented to root out traitors and dismantle the Veil of Purity's influence. Nobles found guilty of collusion faced swift justice, while others were stripped of their titles and banished. It was a painful process, one that tested the limits of loyalty and trust, but Vailithra remained steadfast. She understood that true progress required sacrifice. Elias played a crucial role during this turbulent period. His calm demeanor and strategic thinking helped stabilize relations between Earth and Luminaris, ensuring that humanity didn't abandon the alliance altogether. Together with Vailithra, he worked tirelessly to rebuild bridges burned by hatred and misinformation. They organized public forums where citizens could voice their concerns, addressed fears head-on through transparent communication, and highlighted examples of successful interspecies cooperation across the galaxy. Slowly but surely, public opinion began to shift. While skepticism lingered, especially among the older generations, younger Zarathians embraced the idea of coexistence, seeing it as an opportunity rather than a threat. One evening, as the palace gardens bloomed under the soft glow of the twin sons Vaelithra and Elias found themselves alone on a quiet bench overlooking a crystalline fountain. The sound of trickling water provided a soothing backdrop to their conversation. "I never thought I'd see the day when people cheered for me," Vaelithra said softly, a hint of disbelief in her voice. "For so long I was invisible. Now they look to me for guidance." Elias smiled, reaching out to take her hand. "That's because you've earned their trust. You've shown them that strength isn't about perfection. It's about resilience, about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard." She looked at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "And none of it would have been possible without you. You saw something in me when no one else did. You believed in me." He squeezed her hand gently. "Because you're extraordinary, Vaelithra. Don't ever forget that." Their moment of reflection was interrupted by Lysara, who approached with a datapad in hand. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "But there's something you need to see." On the screen was a message from Earth, a formal invitation extended by the United Earth Council. It praised Vaelithra's leadership and offered her honorary citizenship as a gesture of goodwill. More importantly, it included a personal note from the Council's chairperson, expressing admiration for her decision to step down after a decade to pursue life alongside Elias. Vaelithra read the message twice, her heart swelling with emotion. Stepping down wasn't a decision she had taken lightly. As Empress, she had the power to enact lasting change, to reshape Luminaris into a society that valued inclusivity and compassion. But she also knew that clinging to power indefinitely would undermine her mission. By stepping aside, she hoped to inspire future leaders to prioritize service over ambition, to lead with humility and grace. "You're really going to do it, aren't you?" Lysara asked, her voice tinged with awe. "Leave everything behind?" Vaelithra nodded, her expression resolute. "Not everything, just the title. My duty to my people doesn't end here. If anything, it's just beginning." Lysara smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "Then I'll make sure your legacy lasts forever." Months passed, and preparations for Vaelithra's departure began in earnest. Her final act as Empress was to establish the Unity Accord, a treaty promoting cooperation between Luminaris and Earth. The document outlined shared goals in areas like technology, education, and cultural exchange, laying the foundation for a brighter future. On the day of her farewell address, thousands gathered in the rebuilt Grand Hall, eager to hear her parting words. "Today, I leave behind a throne but carry forward a dream," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "A dream of a world where differences are celebrated, not feared. Where love transcends boundaries and understanding replaces judgment. I may be leaving Luminaris, but my heart will always remain with its people. And I ask you all to continue building the future we envisioned together." As she stepped down, from the podium applause erupted throughout the hall, a thunderous ovation that echoed far beyond the palace walls. For the first time in her life, Vaelithra felt truly seen, not as a princess or an empress, but as herself. Later that evening, she and Elias boarded a starship bound for Earth. Standing side by side on the observation deck, they watched as Luminaris grew smaller and smaller, its shimmering spires fading into the vastness of space. Behind them, the citizens of Luminaris gazed skyward, their hearts filled with admiration and gratitude. As the ship entered hyperspace, Vaelithra leaned her head against Elias's shoulder, a contented smile playing on her lips. "We did it," she whispered. "Against all odds, we did it." Elias wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "This is just the beginning," he replied. "Our journey has only just started." Together, they turned their gaze toward the stars, ready to forge a new path, one defined not by limitations but by endless possibilities.